Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Sonic the Hedgehog for the Game Gear. In the last part we started off the game and now we're in another Game Gear exclusive zone, Jungle Zone. This place is pretty tricky in terms of level design actually, because there's a lot of jumps you have to make in order to make over pits or even little spiked logs like that. However, as a whole, I could say this zone is actually still pretty easy. In fact, on the whole, Sonic 1 on Game Gear is very easy. Mind you, I think almost every Game Gear Sonic game, aside from one in particular, are actually pretty easy games. Like Mega Man X4 not Jet Stingray, that was Web Spider. Logs are your best friend in the stages. They can get you across waterfalls and you can walk across them like this in order to get over certain sections of water, where there's currents even. And you're gonna want to keep that in mind, because that's how we find the Chaos Emerald, which is in Act 1 this time around. Admittedly, I used to really hate this zone when I first played the game, but nowadays it's honestly not that bad, though. This Chaos Emerald is one of the more god-dang-it ones, because you have to end up going backwards to grab it. And there it is. Chaos Emerald number 3 is 6. We're halfway there. Halfway there. Halfway there. Gotta admit, though, out of all the Game Gear exclusive tracks, this is probably my least favorite, because it's catchy, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit too short and repetitive, even for a Game Gear song. Either way, speaking of the soundtrack, I was doing some research in between parts, and realized that I found out that this game's soundtrack was composed by, and I'm probably gonna butcher this name, Yuzo Koshiro. And that's actually a name I recognize, because he did some of the old, I've never been sure how to pronounce the series name. It's like Ys or Ys, however you pronounce it, YS. I think he did 1 and 2, even though I played 1 and 2, even though my personal favorite's 3. And I was doing some more research on him. He's done a lot of stuff, like he's done one of my favorite Super Nintendo games, ActRaiser. And that's a game I keep on mentioning I'm going to do whenever I do an Enix game, and I really have to get to it. I apologize for holding that off for so long, but I really do want to get to ActRaiser at some point. He also did Streets of Rage 1, and I think possibly even 2. Yeah, he did Streets of Rage 2 and ActRaiser 2. That's right, ActRaiser 2 exists. He's done some really good games, and I recommend you check some of them out if you ever have some good time. ActRaiser in particular. I recall the Robotrek thing being pretty good too. And it's at this point that the stages are starting just to be recycled versions that have 1-minute timers instead of 2. I'm trying to remember anything else I know for a fact that Yuzo did. I think he did one of the Shenmue games, and at least one of the Castlevania DS games. I've heard a good amount of the guy's work just over my years of playing games, and he's done some really good stuff. I actually recommend you look up some of his stuff. I think he also had to do something to do with Kid Icarus Uprising. I recall reading that at one point, but I'm not sure if that's true. Guy's done some really good music, though. Either way, I completely skipped over the fact that we ended off Act 1 now. We're going to Act 2 after that special stage. But here you get to see something very interesting. We have 10 lives, obviously. But for some reason, when you're in the stages, the number caps at 9. I don't know why, but it does. Maybe they thought 2 digits would be obscuring the screen too much. I don't know. Either way, Jungle Zone Act 2 is actually a pretty annoying stage, but not for structure reasons, just because it's a bit too long in my eyes. The thing is about this stage is that it's similar to Ice Cap Zone and a few other zones from Sonic 3, in that it's not horizontally structured, it's entirely vertical. One of the few stages in the series that's entirely vertical, by the way. And this leads to an annoying thing that if you get knocked off by an enemy, you're probably gonna fall down a good bit. There aren't many enemies in the stage, most of them are just those little jumping fish that I forget the name of. But if you miss a jump, that's also gonna suck. This stage I recall taking a bit of practice in order for me to get right, because I did practice this game at least 1 or 2 times. Not on my usual method of playing, though. I actually practiced them on my GameCube with Sonic Adventure DX, because a lot of the Game Gear games were available in that. Now, I forget if it was all of them, though. I think it was just most of them. Like, I don't think Sonic Blast was a part of that, but I could be wrong. Mind you, I guess I'll find out later on in this marathon. I actually should reiterate. I technically called this a bit of a... I think I even called it earlier, last part of the end of the previous game. But I called this a Sonic mini marathon, but it's more of a Game Gear-a-thon because I just wanted to get some Game Gear games out of the way. Though there's one particular Game Gear game I'm thinking of that I'm saving for much later. Keep that in mind. Because that game pisses me off to no end. Either way, on to this next special stage. Admittedly, one thing I do like about the special stages in this game are, first off, the background. I love the little starry look. And secondly, the music. It's nice and catchy. Then again, Sonic is very similar to Mega Man for the most part, in that even in some of the worst entries in the series, the music is almost always good. There's very few Sonic or Mega Man soundtracks I can recall being outright horrible. The only ones I can think about are Shadow the Hedgehog, because I cannot remember any of that soundtrack. And at least, I mean, I can remember bad songs, but songs that aren't memorable, that means they're probably boring, which is one of the big problems that Sonic Shadow the Hedgehog had, rather. And on the Mega Man side, probably Legends 2. Mind you, Legends 2 soundtrack has some great stuff in it, but I just haven't played Legends 2 enough. Any other Mega Man game I think of that had a pretty unmemorable soundtrack? Battle Network 4. Battle Network 4 all the way, actually. And that was that special stage. And with that, now we're on to Jungle Zone's boss. Jungle Zone's boss was one I actually had a lot of trouble with in my earlier days of playing this game. But nowadays, it's actually a pretty easy one. Once we get to the boss, which is actually one of the shorter boss stages, actually, because we're about there right now, I believe. Yeah. The way this one works is that Eggman comes down from the top, heads left, and then drops a bomb onto the little ramp-like area, which you have to avoid. Eventually, it will disappear, and he'll just drop another one. But if you're quick, you can kill him before he takes any chances. I keep on calling him Eggman. It's Robotnik back in this day, damn it. Though he's always been Eggman in Japan, but I know how the Sonic fan base can get. Though I gotta admit, I think I've always been more of a fan of the Eggman name than the Robotnik. I don't know why. But yeah, that's Jungle Zone. Pretty easy area, all things considered, but there are some troubling things that you might have some issues with it in. And now we're on to Labyrinth Zone. Why? Out of all the zones to bring back, why Labyrinth? Though Labyrinth Zone's actually not too bad in Sonic 1 Game Gear. It is the usual water level, and you can drown, but when the counter actually comes up, it's severely slower than it is on the Genesis games. Like, it says 5 seconds, but it takes closer to maybe 10 or 15, and I think I know why. Whenever you're underwater, the game slows down tremendously, not just because of water physics, but I'm guessing because the extra programming or layering stuff that's going on causes the game to slow down to, at times, excruciating crawl. It's kind of bad, but thankfully bubbles are still there, and they can help you. Though the annoying thing about bubbles in this game is that because the game can run so slowly, it can take some time for them to show up and thus make you panic. So I'm kind of disappointed. Even though the theme scared me as a kid, there's no drowning theme. Oh. But yeah, actually, one thing I don't think I've gone over yet is my personal experience of Sonic 1 Game Gear. Game Gears was not a thing. The Game Gear was not a thing I was familiar with until I was about maybe 7 or 8 years old. So roughly 2004, 2003, somewhere in that range. And I only know about it because one of my brother's friends brought one over for some sort of weird LAN party they were doing. I don't know what game it was for, but it was weird because they were wearing costumes, but at the same time it was kind of fun. From what at least from what I could hear, at least from the next room over. And he had Sonic 1 in it for some reason, and he let me play around with it for a bit just so I could see what gaming was like back in his day. Though he was only, mind you, actually 12 years older. He's actually a pretty decent age range. Wonder how that guy's doing, actually. Admittedly, that's actually the thing about me in games. If a lot of the game series I love, I was either introduced to from my brother, my brother's friends, or, actually, what would you call the child of your godmother and father? God cousin? God family? What would that be called? I don't know. Ah, okay. Ouch. Yeah, screen scrolling issues are still a thing in this game, though they actually, from the Master, because the Master System version actually came out first. And they did try to fix some things to the screen crunch. Namely, like in Green Hill Zone, you might remember there were little yellow warning signs to warn you in high-speed sections when you were coming up on spikes. Those weren't there in the Master System version. But overall, admittedly, they made an interesting balance between Master System and Game Gear. Game Gear is a bit harder due to the lower resolution, and the sprites look a bit worse because of it, but at the same time, the color palette is a lot richer. There's more colors available for some reason. So there's actually a bit of a nice little compromise there I like. And you can definitely tell that the graphics are a bit worse on Game Gear, not just because of resolution, but also because of sprite quality. Because in Game Gear, Sonic has no nose, but in Master System, I believe he does. Though, you can actually really see some technical progression as we get through the Sonic Game Gear games, because the sprites get really, really much better. Either way, we're now on my least favorite stage in the game, and we've been in it for about a minute now, actually. Labyrinth Zone 2. Why? This place is long. Mostly just because of how much time you spend underwater, and because of that, either waiting for bubbles or just in mass slowdown. And I'm not a fan. Thankfully, Labyrinth Zone is only 2 acts long comparatively to Sonic 1, so I can at least be thankful for that. But overall, still not a fan of Labyrinth Zone. I still wonder, going into a bit of Sonic 1 or Genesis thing, I think I mentioned this even back in the old LP. I still wonder why the original intended stage order was Green Hill then Labyrinth. Because the order of stages on the level select in that game is the intended stage layout. Why would you go right to Labyrinth? They made a better choice by having Marble there. Hell, Marble's actually my favorite zone in Sonic 1. As odd of a statement as that is. But, ugh, Labyrinth Zone 2, why? Bubble? 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 Bubble, please, I need you, buddy. Come on. Thank you. I was actually panicking there, though, when I was recording. There's something very tense about any underwater section you can drown in, no matter the game, that just makes you kind of... what's the word I'm trying to find here? Seize up. There we go. Because I remember one of my earliest gaming fears was not crushophobia or spikophobia. Heck, I'm mostly over crushophobia. It was aquaphobia. Purely because of Chemical Plant Zone. And that damn section where the water's rising up those tubes and you have to jump on the blocks. I was not a fan of that. I died there a lot and heard that very terrifying song. That's actually, I forget if I mentioned that back in Sonic 1 or 2, but my first Sonic game was actually Sonic 2. It was either that or Sonic 3. It was one of those. I can't recall at this point, but either way. The second level, both of them were water levels, and I drowned in both, and was just plain awful. Though I think I accidentally may have done the stage select code in one of them at some point. I forget which one. Probably Sonic 2, because the stage select cheat in Sonic 3 standalone is pretty annoying. And there's the Chaos Emerald! Really in the way, because the exit is right here. I know for a fact, in the Master System version, that thing is in a different place. They changed its placement, I'm guessing, due to either difficulty or something else. But either way, that's Labyrinth Zone Act 2. So before we head into the final act, let's head on over to the next special stage.
Alright, this one's pretty easy. We've seen this one before. Admittedly, the worst part about special stages, as I mentioned before, is the bumpers. But they only really get worse when you're rushing. Because otherwise, they don't really do much. As long as you're taking your time, they shouldn't give you much issue. Though sometimes insanity can show just based off how they're bouncing you all over the place. Oh my god, where am I going? Now over here. What actually ends up happening if you run out of time in the special stage is that you're just plain old booted out of it. I forget if you still get the score from it, but yeah, that's what happens. Can I get through here, please? Oh my god. Bumpers are Satan. Going everywhere. Going up and down and all around. Oh my god, where am I going?
Well, that happened. I guess you don't get a ring score. Huh. Well, that answers my question I said there. Either way, time for the Labyrinth Zone boss, and you'll probably immediately panic because you're underwater. However, for some reason, you have infinite air in this level. You cannot drown. I guess Sonic finally realized, wait a minute, Izuka was wrong. Hedgehogs are great swimmers, and learned to breathe from Mario. I don't know, but it's weird. But this is just here so you can have a water gimmick boss fight, I suppose. Also, those spikes have slightly smaller hitboxes than their sprite make it appear. By the way, the boss of this stage is actually a bit of a revisit to the boss of Bridge Zone. In fact, I think it's even the same sprite. Except he'll alternate between the center, left, and right in that exact order. When he's in the center, he'll send out those 2 little bazooka shots, but when he's at either the top one, he'll send a homing missile at you. The way I generally go about this fight is hit him once in the center, and then twice on the other side, then jump over to the other side just so I can avoid the missile more easily. If you have a shield, you can just use some invincibility frame abuse in order to hit him a few more times, but either strategy is fine, really. I do have to admit, I'm impressed with how they managed to port over some of the Sonic 1 graphics fairly well, because the Labyrinth Zone assets look almost exactly the same in my eyes, but I'm probably a bit off on that. Either way, that's Labyrinth Zone, probably my least favorite zone in the game, but overall, still not that bad. It's an easy game overall, as I said before, so you shouldn't have much issue. And if you do, well, everyone has different experiences, I suppose. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're heading into Scrap Brain and then ending off the game. See you guys then.